So welcome back to another episode, and today I'm going to talk about more video games, more retro games that I think deserve a 10 out of 10. Now, to begin with, I just want to say there's no official list out there for video games that are 10 out of 10. They're personal choices for me. Some of them are just nostalgic reasons, and I'm going to explain today why these games I believe deserve a 10 out of 10. And a lot of people will say out there, no video game is a 10 out of 10. And I definitely understand that, and I respect that. But for me, these games are 10 out of 10s. Now, for my first game that I'm picking, we have to go back to 1989 for myself. And I went into a 7-Eleven one day. There was a little arcade machine there with some Nintendo games on it. So I went to see what this was about. And there, in front of me, was Super Mario Brothers 3. And I was like, oh my God, because I was at school, there were so many rumors all the time about the next Super Mario game coming out, and I'm like, it's here, it's real, and this is the real deal, no more rumors. And so I played it in there, and I remember the people who worked in 7-Eleven were like, hey, are you supposed to be here? Because I skipped school, and I played Super Mario 3 all afternoon, and I loved it. And even back then, I did something ridiculous. I went to a local mall, and they had Super Mario 3, the Famicom Japanese version, that I could buy with an adapter, and I could play it on my regular Nintendo. And I'm like, is this real life? So I bought the game, I brought it home, and it was expensive too. It was like $100 with this adapter. And I absolutely fell in love with everything about this game. I love the look of it. I like the way Mario looked in it. I like the level designs. I like the gigantic levels. I like the water bits. I like the underground caverns. I love the music. I love the power-ups. Every single thing I loved about it. There was something I didn't love though. There was something I didn't love. Whenever I'd play it with this adapter, this Japanese adapter, it would always freeze at certain times, completely random. Never knew when it was going to happen. So I'd be playing the game, I'd be on the last level, getting there, and I'm like, yes, and it would freeze, and I'm like, oh my God, and you couldn't unfreeze it, and you had to take it all apart, blow everything on everything, put it back in, and all that. But Super Mario 3 was magical. It was a magical game. It definitely deserves a 10 out of 10, no matter what, in my mind. And it was also the video game that was shown in The Wizard at the end for the big championship. And that was another big reveal moment for a lot of people out there. But the game is incredible. I still go back to it, pick it up. The controls, every single thing about it work so well together. And that's why, to me, it's a 10 out of 10 game. Next up is a little RPG on the PlayStation 2. You may have heard about it, you may have not heard about it, and that is Dragon Quest VIII. This game here is incredible, and I just want to say, in 2005, I was really looking forward to it, and I finally picked it up. Here's my packaging here. I brought it home. Oh, over 100 hours, easy, on this game. And why is this game so good? I honestly, this is going to be controversial opinion. I almost enjoy this game, thinking about it, more than I like 11. Now, 11 is way better, graphic-wise, all of that, right? It's a modern game. Why I like this is there's a bit more of a challenge. Like there's some locations you'll go to and you'll get decimated, and you have to level grind. I think I'm kind of talking about it from an old school perspective, that I like grinding in video games. I like that, fighting monsters over and over again, getting more powerful, going somewhere I couldn't get to before. And also there was something about the story of this. It's a very emotional story. It made my wife cry. It made my wife cry when she played the game, and she loved the game as much as I did. And we've talked about the game so much over the years, and going back to it, it's a really good RPG. It's a solid RPG. Great story, great music, great monsters, classic Dragon Quest, right? So you know what you're gonna get. You can play the game on the 3DS. This is also another good version of it right here. But my nostalgia goes back to the PlayStation version, PlayStation 2 version, and it really holds up incredibly well. So if you're looking for a bit of an emotional story, a really cool world to explore, you can't go wrong with Dragon Quest VIII. This is up there. I remember my wife put this in her top 10 list. I think this was number 1 if I remember right. Let's go back to the arcades in 1988. And I gotta say, I never saw this game in the arcade, ever. Never saw it in the arcade. I played it on the Sega Genesis in 1989, down the road at my friend's place. And I was mesmerized by it because it was a sequel to Ghosts and Goblins, and that had come out on the NES. That was also an arcade game as well. But Ghouls and Ghosts was like the real deal. This is like, they really started to flesh out the gothic setting. And that's what I gotta say to begin with. What I love so much about it is the world building, if you want to say, on a side-scrolling action game, is so well done. Every level is creepy and stranger than the last. And it always makes you feel unnerved. It always makes you feel unnerved. And I just love Arthur in this one and how he looks. I love when he gets the gold armor. I like all the enemies. Love the music. And it's funny, going back to play it again, the thing that I love about the game is the difficulty is extremely hard. It's extremely hard. I don't know if I could do a game like that nowadays, but back when I was a younger guy and had nothing but time on my hands, I would sit and play it over and over, and I get killed, and I keep continuing and keep going on because I wanted to see what the next level was. And you played it so much back then that you became really, really good at the game, and the game is so hilarious that it makes you beat the game twice to get the real ending. That's how evil this game is. Ghouls and Ghosts right here, and there's also the super graphics version that is a really good version of it. But I gotta say, the nostalgia when I see this packaging right here, and just the levels and some of the monsters and some of the power-ups you get, it's extremely good, and it controls really well. But for somebody just jumping in for the first time, no, you will die, and you will keep on dying, and then you'll get better. And that's where the fun of the game is. Definite 10 out of 10 for me. Okay, for the next one, this is one that I walk around the games room and I really have a feel and a think about what games are 10 out of 10s to me personally, what they mean to me. And I went to my small collection of Neo Geo games, and I'm looking up there and I'm looking at them all, and I'm like, yeah, this is a great game, this is a great game. And then I see one game and I'm like, you know, this was such a groundbreaking game at the time. This was such a big deal game at the time. And that's the thing, that some of these 10 out of 10 games, it's also about sometimes what they did to the industry when they came out and how important they were. And this next game is Samurai Showdown. And this is 1993. I discovered this in an arcade in Hawaii. I almost got mugged right after I discovered it. That's in another story I have on the channel. It's called Samurai Showdown Rocks. But this game, the moment I saw it, because I was a Street Fighter fanatic, and I saw this game, and I'm like, what is this? What is this? Because I was already a fan of the Neo Geo. And I saw the characters, and I'm like, wow, this is all like samurai characters. They all have weapons? They're all using swords and weapons? I'm like, wow, this is amazing, because we had not seen anything like that in a game before. Not like this. Not like this. A pure Street Fighter style fighting game with weapons. We can knock the weapons out of the other opponent's hands, and then they're, don't have their weapon, and then you got to try to get it back. That's part of the strategy. And the levels were so beautiful and so fitting for a samurai, mystical style of game. And they really sucked me in back then, because I remember making lists of how much work I would have to do to pay for a Neo Geo and this game, and it was impossible. But I made these lists of all these things I was going to try to do to gain the money for it. But for a kid back then, that was over $1,000 to play one game, because as an arcade game, the Neo Geo was very expensive when it was released as a home console. It was unobtainable to most kids, I will say for sure. But the game was so wild, and I just loved seeing Earthquake, the gigantic character on the screen. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. And as I say, the scaling back and forth, and just the weapon fighting, and just seeing the blood sprays, I was like, this is incredible. I love this game. And you know what? I still love this game to this day. It's remarkable. It really did something. And yes, all the sequels kept getting better and all that, but it was such a groundbreaking game when it first came out. Okay, here's a game I have never, ever talked about on the channel, and I think that's just absolutely crazy because I do have a big history with it, and I really adore the game. And that game is, I'm just going to show the PC Engine version, is RType. RType. And I first played it in the arcades, and I fell in love with it. A side view shooting game. And why is this on the list? How many shooting games have come out, over the years? Oh my, thousands, quite literally, thousands. But this game was really a game changer. The way that you used the weapons in the game, and you could attach and reattach that, that pod at the front, incredible. And the way you could power up, and the game, again, is relentless. This game is very, very hard, very challenging, and that is why it wins. Because you keep at it and keep going through the levels, and you got to memorize the levels and what to do at this place and this place to defeat this boss. And it's just that in that first level, and you get to the boss character, and it's something straight out of the movie Alien, and that is amazing. That is I believe that's an iconic scene in video game history. That scene is iconic. And all the levels after that are really cool, very, very hard. But at the time, you'd not seen graphics like this. You just kind of went, whoa. I remember going to the arcade, and I'd play the game, and I was terrible at it, but I'd keep at it. And I just loved it, and I loved the music. And then I got to play it on the TurboGrafx. I boarded it off a friend of mine, and I played it every single day. And the thing about the TurboGrafx version that's really funny is it has slowdown. So when you're going through it, you can get through the level. Sometimes you see a bullet coming and you're like, no, and you can move because there's slowdown, so you can avoid certain attacks and things like that because of it. So RType is a true classic, is a true arcade shooter classic. And yes, I use the term shooter. I know it's shmups, but I always will use the term shooter. That's what we always called them back then. And RType should be in a museum. It's fantastic. Now, the next game I'm going to talk about came out in 1999 in Japan, came out in the year 2000 over here. And I'm telling you, even back then, people either loved this game or hated it. I've been saying that over the years. It really was a hit or miss with people. It was a massive out of the ballpark for me. And I've been talking about it for years, and I adore the game. And it's part of nostalgia now, but I still really love the game. And that is Shenmue. I know, I've talked about this game a lot over the years, but it was so groundbreaking in so many ways in the open sandbox game departments. I'd never played a game like this, and it was cool because you had these virtual fighter style characters that you could run around in this world in 1986 Japan with these incredible, at that time, arcade graphics. I'm like, is this real life? I can do this? I can go explore, and I can go into a parking lot and practice my moves forever. I thought it was awesome. And never mind the collecting, the capsule toys, I got really involved in that. And the terrible dialogue throughout the game and the awkward dialogue, and that's what made it so great for me. And walking into like convenience stores and hearing that music, and to me, in looking back now, it was the swan song for Sega. And I think they put everything they had into this, and I really, really appreciated this game so much. And then obviously there's the PlayStation 4 version here, which they released a high definition version of, so you can play it that way now if you want to. I still love having the Dreamcast controller. I'm playing it old school style. I love Shenmue. I love its history. I love the music. I love the control. I love everything about it. And let me tell you, it's flawed, a lot of the controls. It's not the best. It's not the best. The control setup is pretty pretty screwed up in a lot of ways, if you ask me, but I got used to it and I enjoyed it, and I just loved going back and forth, exploring the world, and then getting to combat with people, bullies and stuff like that. That was a lot of fun. Finding the secret to who was in that black car that day, and where can I find some sailors? This game is hilarious. It's brilliant. It's amazing. And from beginning to end, I was hooked back then, and I was sold on the power of the Dreamcast. And I didn't know that the Dreamcast didn't have too long to go before it would be over. And that's still a sad moment for me. But you know what? It's always there with Shenmue. We can always play Shenmue and remember what it was like back then. Okay, as my last game, this is a bit of a cheat. I kind of put a modern day game in here that is a remake of an older game. So of a Game Boy game, a game I played in 2019 that I didn't know I was going to love so much. I didn't know it was going to have such an effect on me, and it really had an effect on me. And I think a lot of people will be like, really? Oh yeah, for me, this is so crazy. I think about this game all the time. I have the music in my head all of the time, and that is Zelda, Link's Awakening. This game came out on the Game Boy all those years ago, and then they did a remake of this. And let me say, the game is not perfect. It has slowdown in it. Some really annoying slowdown going from one side of, part of the map to the next. I don't like that. But what I do like is everything else. I like the combat. I liked that they took the original and they didn't change that much. And they just, gave it a beautiful facelift, gave it amazing music. And it kind of gives me that 90s nostalgia vibe when I play it, because it is a game that was made in the 90s originally. And just that, the symbolic egg on top of the mountain and just running around. I finished this game twice last year because I was so moved by it. I did artwork. I went to 7-Eleven. I bought the Slurpee cups. I really got into the entire experience with it and really enjoyed the classic Zelda dungeons of it all. Breath of the Wild was a brand new, fresh way to escape the stereotypes of what a Zelda game is. It'll give you open world, where I was kind of happy to go back to all the different dungeons and solving all the puzzles in there. Some of the puzzles are so ridiculous, but that's part of the fun. And it felt like I was really exploring this really little world. And I'm not going to get into it too much, but when I was younger, when I first played Zelda 1 and 2 on the original Nintendo, I used to do these drawings of what I thought the next Zelda should be. And I always thought to myself, what I enjoyed the most is a small world, but with a lot of secrets in it, a lot of different things to explore. And that's exactly what this is. And I just also love the 90s animation in it, at the beginning and at the end. It is so awesome. And it's got a bit of an emotional roller coaster ride to the storyline. And I've spent so much time talking about it. You can find so many videos on the channel of me just gushing about how much I love Link's Awakening on the Nintendo Switch. I think that game is beautiful for sure. So guys, those are some of my 10 out of 10 games and why I love them. I've got the stories. I was there. I really enjoy these games. What are some games that for you are 10 out of 10 games? Is there such a thing? Let me know down below. So anyways, guys, until next time.